Hello, welcome to Skull RPG Podcast. My name's Dwight Skull,
My name's Jacob Skull.
and today we're going to teach you how to tell
Tell your
your story.
So, Dwight, since we talked about beginning on the hooks last time, how important are hooks to your game?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. So you have, honestly, what most people think of as a hook is, sadly, they might think of, how do I get the players to meet? We just do the tavern. But in reality, every single game session should start with some sort of hook, or if you've ended on a cliffhanger, a quick recap, and then an asking of the players what they want to do as you start to unveil what the cliffhanger was. And we'll talk about cliffhangers in a different podcast. But hooks are absolutely important because one of the things I've noticed in some of the game masters I've played with is they don't set up the game properly. And so you'll get maybe a description of a setting, but not enough information to know what to do after.
Yes, I've seen that a lot with our other game master where he gets us to this point and then we as players don't know what we need to do to progress because he hasn't given enough information for us to make a decision.
Right. So it'd be kind of like, just to give, the audience an understanding of what that looks like. It's there's you have your standard D&D party, and the next thing you know, it's like, okay, well, you hear a rumor that the princess has been captured. What do you want to do? What do you mean? What do I want to do? Do I care about this princess? Is it my princess? I mean, how many kingdoms are in this world? Like, and captured by what? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? As opposed to, let me just take the exact same scenario, and I'm literally just coming up with a scenario off the top of my head, but this is the exact same scenario, and say, all right, as you guys are hanging out at the tavern, you hear a rumor from three grizzled gentlemen next to you who look like they've been in a scuffle lately. They look like they're a part of the Queen's Guard for your home country, talking about the fact that a dragon has flown in, and with a small army commanded by what appeared to be a wizard dressed in all black robes with the skull mask for a face, came in and assaulted the castle, killed most of the guards, and has taken the queen hostage. Boom. Now, I wouldn't say, what do you want to do at that point?
And then the further thing you could add is the kingdom's offering a reward to get the queen back, because now that's your call to action.
That's your call to action, and it's your hook, because your call to action and your hook are the same thing. It's like there's money to be involved here, so here's at least one reason to do it. Or if the characters are good, you can do something else. If you're really smart GM, as opposed to just having that happen at the beginning of the thing, you have it happen near the middle, and what happens is you've already introduced this queen and this princess, or whoever it is. You've made them care for this figure. You've given them a memorable.
You made them
NPC.
Important that the NPC that
They
your
want
player
to help.
characters care about them, and
Yes.
now yes, money is a driving force, but there's actually an emotional tie
Right.
to get her back.
In fact, money's a horrible reason to just do stuff. So, to be honest, okay. Look, there are three motivations in people's life, and this is in reality, not just D&D. This is, if you want to sell something to somebody, you either talk about finances, so some way of money. You talk about health, some way they can be healthy, or you talk about some sort of relationship. D&D always seems to rely on, there's a bag of gold, which is dumb. If you play your NPCs right, you can actually rely on relationships, and health is kind of a hard one because you have these hit points, but you could
do a weird curse thing on one of the players, and there's a driving force to have them go and fix the curse.
Absolutely. They could be nightmares where they're waking up fatigued, now they're taking minuses. There could be a cursed item they have to get rid of. There's so many different ways. Again, if you watch any movie or TV show, you'll see that you'll see relationships, so love or sex, you'll see money, and you'll see health, most likely trying to gain it back, or get it for somebody else. Right? Again, how many video games have you played where you come across a child who needs help, and I'm thinking like Witcher 3 or something crazy, and you got to go into the mountains and you got to go find this one little herb and come back with it. No big deal, except of course the herb's guarded by like a werewolf, and you got to kill the werewolf to get the herb. I mean,
to go to a TV show that you and I haven't watched. Whole entire reason why Breaking Bad went from a science teacher to a meth dealer is because he was diagnosed with cancer and he only has X amount of time to live. So when you're faced with your health and you don't have the money for chemo,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
trying to gain the money for you to gain your health back.
Exactly. You'll do anything you want. You'll do everything you can to get your health back.
Uh-huh.
I mean, anyway, it's those are the things. So the hook really needs to deal with money, relationships, or health, to be honest with you. And so it doesn't have to be totally tied into that. But the point is, you can't, your hook should have enough information and enough call to actions that your players have. I'm not even going to say one option. I'm going to tell you they have to have three options, because if you only give them one option, now you're doing what's called a railroad. It's called a railroad because if the train goes anywhere but where the railroad goes, it crashes, it derails, people die.
Yep.
Hence the term
And
derailing the game.
and it's also this thing of, as the player standpoint,
Oh, it's
you're not
horrible.
really, it's not really as fun because now you don't have the option. The whole entire point of a tabletop RPG is for you to have your own action in a world.
Right. Have you ever
And-
played? Have you ever played those? It's quote unquote. Have you ever played a game where all you're doing is meaninglessly clicking options in a novel? I mean, you're basically just reading a novel, and you have really no choice. You're just like, say this or this, and it doesn't really matter. This is what it feels like to be in a railroad. It's like, I don't want to play that. If I wanted to read that book, I would have read that book. I don't want to play that book as a game and the most horrible version of that game one could think of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, regardless, your hook should be big enough, flavor text wise, although don't read a page, but big enough flavor text wise to give your players a reason to care. So one of the three things we just talked about. Two, information that's actionable in
Yes.
1 to 3 different ways.
Or more. Having more options is always better.
Right, because then when you ask your players, what do you want to do? They don't look at you like deer in the headlights. Like, okay, the princess has been captured. So what?
Actually, having some infighting in your players because of where they're getting pulled to go helps.
Right. Yeah, and let's see if I can come up with an example that's just off the top of my head. So, okay, just to set a scene. We're going to use that same scene with the queen or the princess being captured by an outside force. So what you could have one of those grizzled soldiers say is one of them can say, well, I know if we could just get insert NPC name here to help with this, they have some magic that can counteract that mage's magic. Especially if you guys are like lower level, they're going to need to get the higher level mages involved to fight off the other higher level mage. And so then they can overhear, or they could ask, well, where's that person? Well, okay, that's a side quest. That's one option they have to go, is to go try to enlist the help of this NPC.
You could have another grizzled guy say, I also know that there's a magic sword or something that has rumors to combat that magic as well.
Right.
So that's another side quest.
Or maybe
as
there's
well.
maybe there's a sort of dragon bane or a dagger dragon bane, which would help you fight the dragon, and that's over here. You could also have maybe a mystery element where they might drop, or like a political intrigue element where one of those guys or somebody else at the bar overhearing the soldiers might call out and say, you know who I think was involved, and they mention somebody that's on the cabinet, like the advisory cabinet, think Game of Thrones, you got your people that are advising the king or the queen, and that person's lusty for power and has been known to make comments that, so then they could go try to investigate that guy, so there's like, right now we've given you can go get a sword, you can go get the NPC wizard, or you can go try to investigate this cabinet guy. There's three options for you. So if I say, well, what do you guys want to do? They also could just say, well, we want to listen a little bit more. Cool. So I'll just come up with another thing off the top of my head, and I'll just do it literally right now. So maybe while they decide to wait a little bit longer or press a couple of the guards with an intimidate roll, or maybe diplomacy or seduction or something like that, they could also find out that the general for their command has gone missing. But he didn't go missing in the battle. He went missing 2 days beforehand. And that him going missing has really allowed this entire event to happen. So now they can go try to figure out,
what happened to him.
right, where was the last place you saw him? Oh, in this camp. So they can go do investigative clues and stuff on that camp to find out if somebody stole him, kidnapped him, or whatever, which would have allowed the dominoes to kind of fall for this to happen. So as you can see, the hook's really important, and it shouldn't just be a quick little like one sentence flavor text. You should have 1 or 2 sentence flavor text, and then as you start saying, as you listen a little bit more, everybody make me a listen check or something like that. Oh, okay. You hear this line overheard, and so you can kind of like tease it out. So it's not like you're just going to read this wall of text that your players are going to gloss over. You can quickly just read the one or two lines. Hey, this is what's happened. You see some grizzled men at the bar. You all make me a listen check. And you
Yep.
make the listen check really, really low. Don't
Yeah.
tell them what it was because they don't need to know what the check was. Honestly, anybody with a listen could have heard it, even if you rolled a zero somehow. Like you had a -1 in listen. You rolled a one, you got a zero, you still heard it. This guy is loud, but I'm not going to tell you that he's loud. I'm just going to pick the guy who heard the best and say, oh, you heard this.
Make them feel like
They've accomplished
they've
something.
accomplished something compared to just sitting and
Yeah.
letting you read a short novel.
Well, honestly, that's a bonus tip, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
If you had something on there like I need this, they need to have a DC of 15 to figure this out. Otherwise, like my entire game is screwed. And everybody, like the highest person rolls a 12. Literally, take some of that information that you just had at a 15, truncate it out enough, and just give them enough of a bone so that they can start pursuing a lead,
Yeah.
and your entire game's not wrecked. Like the only person that knows what your DC checks were is you. You're the only one that knows it. The players don't know what they're doing. You're creating the world. So if your whole game's going to be ruined because you didn't think ahead enough, that's fine. Just drop the DC or give them a partial information, and then give them a way to find other stuff out. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that's the hook. I mean, in a nutshell, that's the absolute how I would do a hook, and how I do hooks.
Yeah.
Multiple options. So hopefully that's very helpful to you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening.
And for more resources, please go to skullrpg.com.